My parents gave me an ultimatum: sell the home I worked years to afford in order to bail out my irresponsible brother's failing business, or be disowned from the family. So I signed the papers. But not to sell my house, to block them from everything I owned. If they wanted to choose sides, I let them. They walked away and lost everything. That day was merely the beginning. Thank you for joining me here today. I trust you're experiencing a wonderful day, no matter where you are. I would appreciate it if you could share in the comments which city or nation you're viewing from, and what time it is there. Now, let us commence our narrative together. The tremor of my mobile device on the nightstand felt like a literal impact. It was a Tuesday morning, crisp and cool outdoors, with the sun just starting to illuminate the edges of the window coverings in my sleeping area. The name displayed on the screen caused my abdomen to tighten, a familiar, sickening constriction: Mother. I gazed at it for an extended period, the small gadget possessing the ability to shatter the delicate tranquility I had established. That tranquility had not been easily acquired. It had cost me a family, the one I was born into, at least. Departing had been the most challenging action I had ever undertaken, a choice forged in the crucible of betrayal and despair. They believed they would crush me, that I would return groveling. They were mistaken. And that day, the day I departed, was not the conclusion of the tale. It was simply the genesis. My existence, the one I had constructed painstakingly, brick by brick, bore no resemblance to what my parents had envisioned for me. I was not their favored offspring. That position was exclusively reserved for my elder sibling, Mark. From the moment I could comprehend speech, I understood the unspoken hierarchy of our household. Mark was the visionary, the entrepreneur, the one destined for eminence. I was the pragmatic one, the conscientious one, the afterthought who was expected to simply exist and fulfill necessary duties for the true luminaries of the family. While Mark effortlessly navigated through school, succeeding on charisma and minimal effort, subsidized by my parents, I held part-time employment from the age of 16, preparing fast food, arranging merchandise on shelves, anything to accumulate funds for university tuition and avoid burdening my parents, who consistently seemed to be investing capital into Mark's latest ill-conceived venture. Regardless, they would dismiss my efforts with a wave of the hand when I brought them up. "Oh, Alex, that's commendable. But observe Mark. He possesses genuine insight. This new application concept will generate millions." Millions never materialized. What did materialize were depleted bank accounts, maxed-out credit cards, and increasingly strained hushed conversations between my parents after Mark's enterprises inevitably collapsed. Yet, the narrative remained unaltered. Mark was merely gaining experience, taking chances, thinking innovatively. I was simply working, playing it safe, uninteresting. My consistent advancement through higher education, my degree in finance, securing a respectable position, these were met with polite nods, swiftly eclipsed by the latest update on Mark's exciting, albeit failing, endeavors. Acquiring my residence at 29 was meant to be a moment of undeniable triumph, a quiet victory lap I desperately required. Every saved dollar, every late night studying, every social sacrifice had contributed to that initial payment. Walking through the empty rooms for the first time, the aroma of fresh paint and potential filling my lungs, I experienced a surge of pure, unadulterated pride. This was mine. I had established this security for myself. My parents' reaction was subdued. "Oh, it's pleasant, Alex," my mother remarked, her gaze already searching for potential imperfections. My father nodded. "Sound investment. Substantial equity. You could access that equity." Not a home, but a resource, a comment that stung, a dull ache I attempted to disregard even within my sanctuary. Their transactional perspective on life, their intense focus on assets and potential liquidity, felt like a pervasive shadow. They rarely visited, but the house felt like a silent challenge to their narrative, a symbol of my self-reliance they didn't quite comprehend how to process. Meanwhile, Mark had initiated his most ambitious undertaking yet, a technology startup he vowed would revolutionize the sector. The buzz was considerable, fueled by polished press releases and Mark's captivating presentations. My parents spoke of it effusively and constantly. Mark is on the verge of something immense, Alex. Greater than anything you could conceive with your modest finance job. I reviewed the business plan. I identified the warning signs. I attempted gently to highlight the unsustainable expenditures, the unrealistic forecasts. My counsel was predictably dismissed. You don't grasp innovation, Alex. It's not about steady expansion, it's about explosive impact. That was their characteristic phrase, delivered with a dismissive gesture, silencing any inconvenient truth I dared to articulate. Difficulties began to surface approximately 18 months in. Investors grew restless. Deadlines were missed. Salaries were not disbursed punctually. Mark predictably entered a state of panic, vacillating between blaming everyone else and promising impossible turnarounds. My parents, naturally, became his fiercest defenders, intervening, securing interim loans, and intensifying pressure on anyone who voiced skepticism, including myself. The calls commenced innocuously enough. Alex, Mark is under considerable strain. He's working so diligently. Then, less innocuously. He requires a little assistance to navigate this period. Could you perhaps lend him something? Just until the next funding round. I had traversed this path previously, in smaller increments. Loans to Mark were never repaid. I cannot, Mother, I would respond, maintaining a steady tone. My savings are currently committed. They are for my future. The requests grew bolder, transforming into outright demands. They ceased inquiring if I could lend him capital and began instructing me on what I needed to do. That residence of yours, my father stated one evening, his voice gruff over the telephone. There's substantial equity in it now. More than enough to cover Mark's liabilities and provide him a fresh start. My blood ran cold. Sell the house, Father? That's my dwelling, my security. It's merely an asset, Alex. My mother interjected, her voice sharp. Family is more significant than bricks and mortar. Mark requires this. He is your brother. The pressure became relentless. Daily calls? Electronic messages filled with passive-aggressive insinuations about familial loyalty and my supposed selfishness. Family dinners became agonizing. The atmosphere in their dining area, typically redolent of roasted fowl and comforting familiarity, now reeked of desperation and accusation. Every gaze felt like an indictment. Mark would sit there, sullen or agitated, sometimes murmuring about how everyone was against him, reinforcing my parents' conviction that I was part of the problem by not instantly sacrificing my stability for his latest failure. I confided in my friend Sarah. We had known each other since university, both first-generation professionals who comprehended the struggle. Seated in her comfortable living room, coffee warming my hands, I recounted the entire ordeal. They want me to sell my house, Sarah. To rescue Mark's failed startup. She stared at me, astonished. Your house? The one you labored so diligently for, Alex? That's preposterous. No parent should ever request that. Her words were a lifeline. They validated what I felt deep within but was still struggling to accept. This was not normal. This was not affection. This was exploitation, plain and simple. The realization caused my chest to constrict, not solely with apprehension but with a simmering indignation. I began perceiving everything through a different perspective. Every past sacrifice, every overlooked accomplishment, every dollar expended on Mark was part of a pattern leading inexorably to this juncture. They utilized every weapon in their arsenal. They brought up things they had financed when I was a child, dental braces, summer camp, distorting them into obligations I owed, obligations I could only discharge by jeopardizing my adult security. After all we've done for you, became a constant refrain. They questioned my character, my allegiance, my comprehension of what family truly entailed. They depicted Mark as a fragile prodigy on the brink of collapse, and me as the cold, unfeeling brother hoarding resources. My residence, my sanctuary, began to feel less like a haven and more like a target. I would traverse the rooms, run my hand over the countertops, gaze at the small garden I was cultivating, and a wave of dread would engulf me. Was I destined to lose everything? Would their coercion break me? The apprehension was a physical burden, heavy on my shoulders, rendering sleep a distant memory. My thoughts raced, replaying conversations, seeking an escape that did not involve self-destruction or completely alienating the individuals I was, however twisted, still bound to by lineage. But the more they pushed, the colder and clearer the choice became. The ultimatum arrived on Thanksgiving. Of all days, the day intended for gratitude, for family coming together. We were at their dwelling, the house I grew up in, a place that suddenly felt alien, every family photograph on the wall like an accusation. The aroma of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie usually filled me with nostalgia. This year, it merely made me feel ill. The tension was palpable from the moment I arrived. Mark was present, looking pale and drawn, but with a stubborn, almost expectant look in his eyes. My parents were on edge, their smiles brittle. Conversation was strained, circling Mark's predicament without ever settling. After the dessert was served, my mother cleared her throat. "Alex," she began, her voice excessively sweet, a tone that invariably signaled something unpleasant was impending. "We need to discuss this." "Seriously," my father interjected. No preamble. "We have exhausted every other option. Mark requires a substantial capital injection immediately. The sole means to accomplish it is with your house." My fork clattered against the plate. The sound seemed deafening in the sudden quiet. "Sell the house, Alex," my mother stated, her voice losing its sweetness, turning as hard as stone. "And the automobile. It should suffice to get Mark back on his feet and settle the most urgent creditors." I stared at them, the two individuals who were supposed to cherish and safeguard me, seated across the table, calmly demanding I dismantle the life I had constructed for myself to rectify a problem their favored child had created and they had facilitated. Mark observed me, his eyes wide, a flicker of something unreadable, fear, hope, in them. "Sell my house?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Yes," my father said impatiently. "We have already conferred with a real estate agent. They believe we can have the documents prepared by Monday." "Monday?" My voice cracked on the word. "This is not a negotiation, Alex," my mother stated, her eyes cold. "This is what family does. We sacrifice for each other. Mark is your brother. He needs this." "But what about me?" I inquired, the question torn from my core. "Where would I reside? What about my future?" "Oh, don't be melodramatic," my father scoffed. "You're intelligent. You'll manage. You can stay with us for a while. It's time you contributed appropriately to the family." That was it. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Contributed properly to the family. My entire existence reduced to a potential asset, a resource to be exploited for the preferred son. The anguish was a physical blow, doubling me over internally. My heart felt like that fragile ceramic dish I had contemplated earlier, now not merely dropped but trampled upon, ground into dust. Everything I had hoped for, every lingering fragment of yearning for their genuine affirmation, perished in that instant. But from the ashes of that hope, something else emerged, cold, unyielding clarity. A sense of righteous indignation I had not permitted myself to experience before. They did not perceive me as a son. They saw me as a financial account with appendages, and I was finished. I placed my fork down deliberately, the faint clink echoing in the strained silence. I looked at my mother, her face fixed in a mask of anticipation. I looked at my father, impatient and demanding. I looked at Mark, now avoiding my gaze. "No," I stated, my voice low but steady. Their expressions did not alter at first. They seemed not to have heard me, or perhaps believed I was jesting. "No," I reiterated, louder this time. "I will not sell my house. I will not sell my car. I will not rescue Mark." My mother's eyes widened. My father's face flushed crimson. "What did you say?" my father boomed, slamming a fist on the table. "I said no," I declared, standing up. My legs felt unsteady, but I stood taller than I had in years. "What you are requesting is wrong. It is not familial affection. It is financial abuse. I labored my entire life for what I possess. That residence is my security, my autonomy. You instructed me on the value of diligence and accountability. And now you are asking me to discard it all for this? I gestured towards Mark, then back at them. You wish me to ignite myself to keep you warm. I will not do it. Depart. My mother shrieked, leaping up, knocking her chair backward. Leave our dwelling. You are no child of ours. We disown you. Do you comprehend me? You are severed. My father was also on his feet, pointing towards the exit, his face contorted with fury. You will regret this. You will possess nothing. We will ensure you regret this. Mark simply sat there, appearing stunned, then enraged. My heart was pounding, adrenaline surging through my system. A part of me desired to scream, to weep, to implore them to see reason. But another part, the part forged in silent struggle and overlooked effort, was calm. I looked at them one final time, imprinting the ugliness on their faces. Consider it done, I stated, my voice devoid of emotion, empty. If that is what family signifies to you. I turned and departed. I did not retrieve my coat. I did not glance back. I simply walked out of the dining room, through the living room, past the photographs on the wall that felt less like recollections and more like falsehoods, and out the front door into the cold November air. The silence outside was jarring after the shouting. I stood on the pavement, the scent of pine from their holiday garland sharp and incongruous. The wind whipped around me, chilling me to the bone, but I barely perceived it. All I felt was a profound, aching emptiness. The void left by the family I had just abandoned. Tears stung my eyes, freezing on my cheeks. It was finished. The bond was severed. It hurt more than I could have imagined, a deep, visceral wound. But beneath the pain, a tiny, delicate spark flickered freedom. I entered my vehicle and drove home. My house. The house I had not been compelled to relinquish. Pulling into the driveway, observing the lights I had left on, the familiar silhouette against the darkening sky, it was no longer merely property. It was a stronghold, a sanctuary. It was mine. And preserving it meant I had not lost everything. That day was merely the commencement of a vastly different journey. The ensuing silence was absolute. No calls, no text messages, no electronic mail. For weeks, it was precisely what they had promised, disownment, delivered cold and complete. The initial sorrow was overwhelming, a heavy shroud of deprivation and solitude. Thanksgiving had been ruined, not just the day, but the very concept of family as I had understood it. I felt adrift, isolated. Sarah was a pillar during this period, listening patiently, reminding me that their reaction validated my decision. As painful as it was, they only valued you for what you could provide them, she gently stated. That is not love, Alex. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to process. The pain started to intermingle with anger, the hurt with a burgeoning sense of self-worth. I concentrated on my profession, on my residence, on constructing my life independent of their approval or demands. The house was no longer simply security. It was a symbol of my resilience, a testament to choosing myself. I began seeing a therapist, discussing years of suppressed emotions regarding favoritism and never being sufficient. It was arduous, painful work, but essential. Information concerning Mark and my parents filtered back through the informal network of extended relatives and mutual acquaintances. Mark's legal difficulties stemming from the failed startup were escalating. More creditors were emerging. And my parents, in their desperation after I declined to be their financial savior, had taken increasingly drastic and imprudent measures. They had secured a substantial second mortgage on their own dwelling, emptied retirement accounts that were intended to sustain them for decades, and even borrowed from acquaintances and other family members, all to prop up Mark and maintain their social facade. They had doubled down on a losing wager, utilizing their security when they could not compel me to use mine. Then the desperate calls began, not from my mother first, but from my father. His voice, usually so resolute, sounded shattered and panicked. Alex, we are in severe difficulty. It's worse than we imagined. My mother followed. Her tone was a perplexing blend of entreaty and veiled accusation. We are at a loss. Mark. It's simply too much. You must assist us, please. Family aids family. The sheer audacity of it left me breathless. After everything, after me, after their cruel utterances, they were back, requesting the very thing I had refused to provide,